Engage is an exhibition at the Massery Gallery that focuses on 91 years of visual art, spanning 22 artists from the Capital Region to the University at Albany Art Collection and the Harlem Art Collection. I certainly want to thank the artists who've also contributed their works to this work, primarily the local artists. And we've been delighted to have a conversation with some of those artists, and I'd like to take the opportunity to show you more about their works. Welcome to the College of St. Rose, the Esther Massery Gallery. We're going to take a look at some of the artists in the exhibition Engage, Artists in Visual Dialogue. We'll begin with Jacqueline Lake Sample. In these four works, Jacqueline presents us with abstract images, silhouettes of figures that represent four stages of human existence. We begin with dreams, and we see the silhouette, two figures facing each other, and these misty clouds of smoke-like rings that represent the dream state. And then from there, we go to interrupted. We see these shards, these sharp angles that are interrupting the existence of this silhouette of a figure in profile. From there, we go to chaos, an image that is almost like a George Floyd figure, and the way in which the figure is sort of broken up into different sections shows not only conflict from an individual basis, but also in terms of a reflection of the broader societal conflict that's taking place in 2020. From there, we move on to serenity. And we see that the figure, again, is back in profile, but the scene is much calmer. It's no longer a dream state. It's a reality, but one that represents something that is more an equipoise or equanimity in terms of characteristics. Abstraction in art is a way for her to communicate very powerfully, and also through language as well. So she has specifically designated each of these pieces to represent, as I indicated, the different states of human existence. From Jacqueline Lake Sample, we go now to Marcus K. Anderson. And Marcus is also affiliated with Black Dimensions in Art as a board member. And in this particular piece that he calls Vibrations, we see four individuals facing to the left, and they are in different states of the experience of listening to music. Each of the different designs, the graphic forms behind them, represents the kinds of music that they're listening to. Music as a form of escape from the stresses of life. This is what this particular piece deals with. Marcus is also a very important graphic illustrator. He's worked on the series for the history of the Black Panther Party, and he also hosts a podcast. So he's multi-talented, and we're just very glad that his work is in this exhibition. This next work is by David Lloyd Tyson, who happens to be my uncle. He was involved with various social protests throughout the years, and in this particular scene, 1967, is 2 weeks after the speech that Martin Luther King gave at the Riverside Church protesting against the war in Vietnam. We see young people gathered here together at Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza near the UN, young people of various ethnicities, arms locked together, signs, and chanting and singing and presenting essentially a unified statement of exercising their First Amendment right to protest against government abuse. This next work is by the local artist Elizabeth Zunon. In this work, she's using oil paint, collage materials for paper, and also plastic bags to tell the story of recycling. A woman in Africa taking found materials, waste products, and rather than being victimized by this waste, she's finding agency by transforming it for something that's useful to her community. And so this idea of taking what is considered poison and transforming it into medicine is an important lesson in this particular piece. Our next artist is Adal. Adal was born in Puerto Rico and at a young age came to New York City. Coming to New York City was a bit of a culture shock for this person who grew up in the country. In this particular scene here, we see that now, as an older young man, he's traveled to San Francisco and he's orienting himself to a new environment here. This person it's a contemplative mood. It's a person who is reflecting on his present circumstances, looking for a sense of identity, who he is in this new environment, just as he was also searching for a sense of identity in New York City coming from Puerto Rico. And this speaks really about to this time in the sense that the problem of conversation, of people being able to communicate with one another in an effective way. This period of time over the last 8 or 9 months during the COVID, the pandemic, has forced many of us to rethink our positions, to engage in conversations with others, and find a solution to the problems that we are all faced with. The next piece that we are looking at is by Francelise Dawkins. It's called Extended Hands That Hold to Give. And in this particular piece, this intergenerational scene shows the importance of giving and sharing within a community. And this is something that is very important to the artist and the way in which she engages different pieces of fabric. And like a community of different materials, like a community of people, we see this interaction of colors and shapes and movement in an effective composition and compositional whole. Daisha Devon Harris is another local artist, and in this work, she represents a woman standing proudly. We see bits of leaves and bubbles of water, a letter opener. And what's interesting about her work is the way in which she's able to, in essence, rescue figures in photographic form that are unidentified. And by repositioning them, reframing them, she gives them new life. Now, in addition to that, she also includes phrases from different poets, in this particular case, Langston Hughes. And the title and the words say, "I do not need freedom when I'm dead. I cannot live on tomorrow's bread." And this certainly speaks very much to us today in this time of reckoning, where people demand change. And this exemplifies that spirit very much. The next artist is a local artist by the name of Elisa Siglianos Carter. And this inkjet print represents a headdress that is actually, in fact, a suit of armor, a protective device against white supremacy. She adds also glitter to it, which gives it a kind of magical sparkle, something that I think again speaks to this time of agency, where individuals can fashion their own sense of protection and identity as they move forward in society and in life in general. Next, we look at the work of Royal G. Brown Jr. These three items that you see here are created from assembled plastic bottles, CD discs, cell phone covers, a variety of household materials. He unifies them through color, and they actually represent not simply spaceships, but also spiritual vessels, spiritual beings, and they all have names as well. Our next local artist is Obaro. Obaro is a painter. However, in this particular instance, he also shows his sculptural skills. And this particular piece speaks to trauma, but also triumph over trauma. This is also an interesting piece because the artist himself holds the World Guinness Book of Records doing the hula hoop on rings. So his physical prowess and the energy that takes is also exemplified here in this power figure. And so this figure essentially exemplifies the ability to transcend trauma and triumph in the end. Our next work of art is by a photographer named Sue Clark. Sue Clark entitles this particular piece, Dancing with the Stars, and it represents an indigenous elder by the name of Duke Simmons. We see Duke Simmons doing a traditional indigenous dance with the Orion Nebula in the background. And I felt that it was important to represent our indigenous brothers and sisters, because in this show, we have to acknowledge the fact that many of the people who are in this exhibit come from different lands, different ethnic traditions. But Native Americans were here first. And so I wanted to acknowledge their importance in this particular part of the planet. Our next artist is Fern Logan. Her work, Transition, is part of the Harlem Art Collection. And in this particular work, we see a dog entering a scene from the left, the upper left, and then you see the same scene repeated, but you don't see the dog until the last frame. And it's this idea of repetition and how one can find resolve, how one can find a certain degree of resolution and not repeat the same situation again and again. So it's something that we've also been facing in this country. How can we go about doing things in a way that we are not repeating the mistakes that we've made before as a country, as a community, and as individuals? And we come now to the work of another local artist by the name of Takis Walter. Takis is a remarkable artist noted for her landscapes. And in this particular piece, we have not an oil painting, which she's commonly known, but a pastel, and she calls it Cusp. This particular work, you can see a sun setting toward the horizon, and yet this ominous moment has just taken place. We see storm clouds that are beginning to break up and settle. And so while this particular piece addresses the challenges of the society in which we live today, it also offers the hope for a new tomorrow, a brighter day in the future. And the last work in this exhibition is by another artist from the Harlem Art Collection, and this is the work of Anthony Barboza. This particular scene shows the community of Fadiyeth in Senegal, West Africa, and we see here a community of people gathered together, exchanging in the marketplace, young people, older people, their colorful traditional garments that they're wearing. This importance of community and sharing is a way to remind us of the importance of community in our own lives today, in terms of how we gather and share that sense of oneness, of family. So this is a reminder of the importance of that, and it also challenges us to find ways of keeping those connections going in the best way that we can. Okay, I'd like to thank you again for joining me on this tour of Engage, Artist and Visual Dialogue here at the Mastery Gallery. I'd like to thank the gallery manager, Erin Sickler, and I'd also like to thank all those who supported this exhibition. It's been a pleasure to share with you the artists and some of the history behind their works. And I think that this is an opportunity for all of us to engage in fruitful and meaningful dialogue. Thank you very much.